Deep in the heart of a forgotten forest, where the sun rarely shines, lies a village that time itself has forsaken. The village, once thriving with life, is now nothing more than a ghostly shell of its former self. The crumbling houses, overgrown with ivy and moss, stand as silent witnesses to the horrors that befell the village long ago. Emma, a young historian, had always been fascinated by tales of the supernatural. When she heard rumors of a haunted village hidden deep within the forest, she couldn't resist the urge to investigate. Armed with only her notebook and a flashlight, she ventured into the dense woods, determined to uncover the truth. As she approached the village, a sense of unease washed over her. The air was thick with an unnatural silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves. The village was eerily quiet, as if the very land had been cursed. Emma's footsteps echoed in the stillness as she walked down the deserted streets, her heart pounding in her chest. The stories she had heard were true. Shadows flitted between the trees, and ghostly figures appeared in the windows of the abandoned houses. Emma could feel their eyes on her, watching her every move. She knew she wasn't alone. As she ventured deeper into the village, she discovered an old, decaying church. Its doors hung off their hinges, and the windows were shattered, but something compelled her to enter. Inside, the air was colder, and the smell of decay was overwhelming. The walls were covered in strange symbols, and at the center of the room stood a stone altar, stained with dark, dried blood. Suddenly, the doors slammed shut, trapping Emma inside. The shadows in the corners of the room began to move, forming into dark, twisted figures. They whispered her name, their voices filled with malice. Emma's flashlight flickered, casting long, eerie shadows on the walls. Panic surged through her as she realized the true nature of the village. It wasn't just haunted, it was a trap, a prison for the souls of the damned. The villagers had made a pact with something evil, something that demanded a terrible price. In exchange for prosperity, they had sacrificed their own, and now their spirits were cursed to roam the village for eternity, seeking vengeance on anyone who dared to enter. Emma tried to escape, but the shadows closed in around her, their cold hands reaching for her. She screamed, but there was no one to hear her. The village had claimed another victim, and her soul would be trapped there forever, joining the others in their eternal torment. The haunted village remains hidden in the forest, a place where the living fear to tread, and those who do never return. Emma's scream echoed through the decaying church, but it was swallowed by the oppressive darkness. The shadows circled her, whispering in languages long forgotten, their voices like nails scraping on stone. Her heart pounded, each beat a desperate plea for survival. But just as the shadows reached out to claim her, a blinding light erupted from the altar. The shadows recoiled, hissing in anger, and for a moment, the oppressive darkness lifted. Emma shielded her eyes from the light, blinking rapidly as she tried to comprehend what was happening. The light pulsed, and within it, a figure began to take shape. It was a woman, her features ethereal and translucent, like a memory brought to life. She wore a tattered dress, and her eyes were filled with sorrow. Emma realized with a start that this was the spirit of one of the villagers, but she seemed different from the others, less malevolent, more mournful. "Who are you?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. The spirit didn't speak, but instead, she reached out a hand, gesturing for Emma to come closer. Against her better judgment, Emma took a hesitant step forward, drawn by the spirit's sad, pleading gaze. As she approached the altar, the spirit reached out and touched Emma's forehead. In an instant, Emma was flooded with visions, flashes of the village in its prime, bustling with life, the villagers laughing and working in harmony. But then the visions darkened. She saw the pact being made, saw the villagers gathered around the altar, chanting in unison as they performed a ritual that bound them to a dark, ancient force. The air had been thick with power, and the ground beneath them had trembled as the pact was sealed with blood. Emma gasped as the visions continued, showing her the aftermath, the once thriving village now a desolate wasteland. Its people cursed to walk as shadows, their souls consumed by the very darkness they had unleashed. And then she saw the spirit before her, a young woman who had been sacrificed to seal the pact, her life taken in exchange for the village's prosperity. Tears streamed down Emma's face as the spirit's memories faded, leaving her trembling in the cold, dark church. She understood now the villagers weren't just victims, they were prisoners of their own making, bound by the terrible choice they had made. The spirit in front of her had been innocent, sacrificed against her will, and her sorrow had kept her tethered to this place, unable to find peace. The spirit's eyes met Emma's once more, and in that gaze, Emma saw a plea for help, a desperate need to break the cycle of suffering. The spirit gestured to the altar, and Emma knew what she had to do. She had to destroy the source of the village's curse, the heart of the darkness that had consumed them all. With trembling hands, Emma searched the church for something, anything, that could help. She found an old, rusted crowbar near the entrance, likely left by someone else who had tried and failed to escape the village's grip. She returned to the altar, steeling herself for what was to come. The shadows, sensing her intent, began to close in again, but the spirit remained by her side, her presence keeping them at bay. Emma raised the crowbar high and brought it down on the altar with all her strength. The stone cracked but didn't break. She struck again and again, each blow echoing through the church like a death knell. Finally, with one last, desperate swing, the altar shattered, the stone splintering into 1,000 pieces. The light from the altar flared brightly, blinding Emma, and the shadows let out a collective wail, their forms dissolving into nothingness. When the light faded, the church was silent once more. The oppressive darkness was gone, and the air felt lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted. Emma looked around, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The spirit of the young woman was still there, but now she smiled, her expression one of gratitude and relief. "You're free," Emma whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The spirit nodded, her form beginning to fade as she found the peace that had eluded her for so long. Before she vanished completely, she reached out one last time, placing her hand on Emma's heart. A warmth spread through Emma, a final gift from the spirit of protection against the darkness that had claimed so many before her. And then, the spirit was gone, her soul finally at rest. Emma stood alone in the ruined church, the silence almost deafening. She knew she couldn't stay here any longer. The village was still a place of death, a graveyard for those who had made the ultimate mistake. But as she stepped out into the light of the breaking dawn, she felt a sense of closure, of having done something right. She would leave the forest and never speak of what she had seen, but the memory of the haunted village and the spirit she had freed would stay with her forever. The village may still stand, its ruins a silent reminder of the darkness that once reigned there, but now, at least, it was no longer a prison for the souls trapped within. As Emma walked away, the first rays of sunlight broke through the trees, casting the village in a golden light. For the first time in centuries, the village was at peace, its shadows finally laid to rest.